Welcome back. I'm Kim Bailey. He's Jamie Wadley, and we're concluding our conversation with Ted Santos today. And in this session, we're looking at questions you can ask yourself to start the process of finding out the unknown unknowns, as well as how we can better negotiate chaos and create breakthroughs for our organisations and our workplaces. So let's pick up the conversation.
Ted, you've lived an interesting life, obviously, and exposed yourself to lots of different cultures. Do you think that you were always driven to be that kind of inquisitive person, questioning?
Yes.
Okay.
For sure. And I made the choice to live abroad as a child. I was 8 or 9 and said I wouldn't marry or have children until I lived abroad. My life was pulled in different directions, so life forced a different direction. I didn't have to take it, but life taught me some lessons.
Does it still empower you, intrigue you, excite you to be looking for disruption to help people find disruptors? Does it drive you?
Oh, of course. I would say before I ever had this as a profession, I had this as a childhood hobby. I was your disruptor in class. So. Right. But in my intimate relationships, that would be also something I would do in my intimate relationships. I'm seeing a woman and I would disrupt the way she would see herself or see the world. So I'm accustomed to getting resistance to things and then them saying, oh, now I see what you were saying. But at first there's resistance. So I've seen that a lot in my life when you make suggestions or you have conversations that's outside of what they are normally thinking. It's sort of you could say the human paradigm is people believe they are really smart. And when you bring up something outside of what they are thinking, they kind of think, well, if that was any good, I would have thought of it already.
No, I was just going to ask Ted if there's a base question that you start your disruptive process with. Is there a question you ask yourself, or is there a particular way of looking at a situation to try to get the juices flowing, if I can put it that way? Because I'm very keen to take this on board, I can assure you.
Sure. With the client, a base question would be, what would be a breakthrough for you? And a breakthrough is some possibility that you don't know how to do with existing resources, except once accomplished, it alters your future forever. It's something that you're not doing. So if you tell me I want to do more, better, or different than what I'm already doing, that's not the breakthrough. That's an improvement. So I'm very distinguishable from improvements. Improvements are improvements. And a lot of times people will say, well, we had little transformations. And a lot of times those are just improvements. And they'll say, well, we had many breakthroughs, but you had improvements.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes the breakthrough is even knowing what the breakthrough would be. Now, there are plenty of CEOs that stay up, it keeps them up at night. There's this legacy they'd like to leave, but they think it's not the right time. My people are not ready. The economy is not right. I don't have the funding. There are lots of reasons, and it's something they would like to accomplish before, they leave as CEO. They're just not sure how to do it. And for others, the breakthrough is knowing what the breakthrough would be.
One of the things that we'll struggle with in terms of feedback from this podcast, I think, is that we have these two distinct groups of listeners. So we've talked a lot about the one end of the scale of your career, the CEOs, the C-suite, the team leaders, those sorts of things. If you're just starting out in your career, your first job, or if you're about to embark on a career, can you still have this mindset of being a disruptor, or do you need to earn your stripes first, shall we say, and learn an industry or learn about the workplace before you start disrupting it?
Sometimes that's the culture of an organization that confines breakthroughs, that the whole thing, if you have to earn your stripes and you haven't been here long enough. I read about this story, really interesting, that it was a firm that hired a lot of engineers. And every time they hired an engineer, on the first day that person started, they would give them this project to work on. And everyone knew the project was impossible. So it was a joke. They'd give the new hire this impossible project. And when they would fail, everyone would laugh and say, we all had to go through it. But then they hired a guy who actually figured it out. And he said, the problem was this, and this. And I corrected that. And here you go. And they never did that again to new hires because he disrupted their
pattern.
Sort of. Yeah. So, right, exactly. So, but it was actually a good thing to do. It's not a bad idea to get someone really thinking, to give them a project, that no one knows how to do and work through it. I don't know if it was a sense of embarrassment because they had been doing it for years and here comes a new guy and works it out. So he disrupted the rest of the organization that couldn't see how to work it out. Well, once he showed everyone, it was like, oh, wow, that's pretty obvious. How did we miss it? Yeah. So the new guy, to your question, can disrupt, but do we create an environment to allow that to happen? That organization created an environment, but really as a joke, but they were actually creating an environment for a new person to come in and disrupt the organization.
So in that case, when that happens, he's disrupted the organisation. How does the organisation recover itself? Because I can see that there would be a whole lot of resentment that we had to go through that, and now someone's just come in and solved it. And where do we sit now? And why were we so stupid? And all of the other introspection that happens.
Right.
What happens to the organisation in that instant? How do they deal with the change?
So that may be one of the things that creates a culture that doesn't allow for these new possibilities. So all of those things that people are going to say, oh, so what, you think you're smarter than us? Or why are we so dumb? I can't believe I missed it. All these pejorative remarks, self-demeaning remarks that people are going to make. None of that is true. And that's the difficult part. So if we go back to the guy who jumped out of his the car to get with his mother, he had this whole story in his head about how much of a bully his father was and how much of a hero he was. And that's the way life is. He's got to be the hero. He's got to stop the bully. But his parents had a dispute. And this happens in many marriages. But his interpretation as a 5-year-old was that he had to be the hero to save his mother. So when the person comes in, the engineer, and solves the problem and disrupts everyone else, they are now all making up stories in their head about how inadequate they are. And they are not. The guy was good, but it doesn't make them inadequate. They are still engineers, right? So what could they have learned from that they didn't see before? And perhaps that he uncovered something they didn't know, and he uncovered it. He was more willing to actually be with not knowing, where other people, when they get to not knowing, like I said, our education system says come up with the answer. And when you put them in the domain of things they don't know, it can be very discouraging. I'm not cut out for this. Yep. This doesn't make sense. It doesn't resonate. I'm not, here in the U.S., I'm not passionate about this. I have to be passionate about it. And if I'm not passionate, it doesn't make sense. I'm not doing it. So all these stories that we make up in our head, we sometimes write an entire novel about how wrong we are or something. So what's wrong with me? What's wrong with him or her? Or the whole system is screwed up. So those are things that, when unlearned, free up bandwidth in your capacity to innovate, because those are the things that will derail you. So in that case with the engineer, it would have been beneficial to everyone to kind of really understand, well, how did you think that through? Walk us through that, and learn from the way he thinks and the way he sees the world. And that would have benefited all of them.
Certainly would, because then it gives them the opportunity to think, when they've got an issue that they can't resolve themselves, well, we'll go and ask so-and-so because he thinks differently to me. And I know that happens a lot when I'm working. I've worked with Jamie for a long time, and when I said I can't do coding, I just completely shut down if I have to think about coding or anything else to that. But I know that he has a capacity to understand databases and to understand that side of things. And so I just don't think about it. I just say, I can't do this. Can you have a look at it when you get a chance and fix it for me? Or suggest some way I can do it that I will be able to do.
what I'm distilling out of what we've spoken about explains to me all of a sudden why startup businesses who bring people in from all different disciplines have the power to disrupt each other and accelerate so fast. Whereas we can get a large organisation that has the resources and has the manpower, has budget to spare, but they have that creative inertia where they don't want to change because this is who we are. Whereas the other people who don't know what they don't know have to invent things as they go along. They go from zero to billion-dollar businesses what seems to be overnight. Talking about incredibly powerful thinking to apply to ourselves. I'm thinking, what can I do today? I find it fascinating, I must admit.
Thank you. One of the things that I've seen to be helpful, the first time I took on an executive position, I was a chief operating officer for a transportation company, and they were growing so fast they were falling apart. And I was hired as a salesman, and I, in 9 months, tripled my income. So I was doing well as a salesman, and so were the other salesmen. So we were growing rapidly. And every week, the president would he would lead the sales meeting. And every week, I would say, hey, if you take this person and put them here, and we put these structures in here, and about every week I'm saying that. One day he said, I'm sick of you telling me how to run my company. Do you think you can do a better job running it? And I said, yes. And he laughed and said, you know what? I'll let you try it. I'll give you 30 days. You run the company. If you don't do a better job than I do, I never want to hear another thing out of your mouth about how to run my company. So I said, I'll do it under one condition. You have to tell everyone I'm in charge. And they can no longer go to you. No one can go to you. They have to come to me. Deal. He did it. And in 2 weeks, he said, I don't need 30 days. The job is yours. So two of the things that I did is the bar for accountability was here. I raised it. There were things, as a salesman, I understood what the salespeople were promising customers, and they were not really unreasonable. It was just about customizing services to clients. And so I would just ask the operations team, do you know what we promised this client? Why aren't we delivering? Why isn't this happening? Why is it? I was just asking questions, and even if I knew the answer, I'm not going to do your job, but I want to know why your job is not being done in a way that we promised the customer. And then when they'd come to me with a problem, even if I knew the answer, I wouldn't answer it. I would ask them questions. I'd start off, what would you do if I wasn't here? Well, I'd do this. Well, what about this and this? Okay, didn't think about that. And they're gone. And then it went to, Ted, I have this problem. Here's my problem. I already know you're going to ask me this list of questions. I already thought them through. And this is where I'm stuck. And I would ask another question. But eventually they stopped coming to me, not because they didn't want me to ask questions, because I'm thinking the word neuroplasticity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they grew new neural pathways in how to solve problems. So I made myself obsolete, so now they could solve them, which then allowed me to look at what are the things that we can offer our clients that we're not offering. Because now I'm not dealing with solving problems. I don't have to ask, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? In fact, I no longer had to say, why isn't this being done? Why isn't that? They come into my office and say, I know you're going to ask about this. Let me tell you why it's already taken care of. You don't have to worry. And then that even stopped. The only problem that happened down the line is the manager didn't want to collaborate on something with a couple of big clients, and we turned down work, and I was out of the office. And when I saw that, I don't yell and scream, but I was really unhappy with that. And I knew that the manager didn't like some things about the supervisor, so he would make him look bad. So he purposely didn't collaborate with him. And I said, whatever you guys have to do to work this out, this is unacceptable. It should never happen again. And it never happened again. In fact, every time they collaborated, they would come into my office and say, look, I just wanted you to see that we worked together on this one. So they were working. So what that allowed is the problems that we were having before just disappeared. They all disappeared. They were now accountable without oversight from me. They had a better way of solving problems, and it allowed us to even though we were growing too fast already, it stabilized the growth and allowed us to grow even to actually increase the acceleration of growth. But the point I'm making is I asked questions instead of solving them. And sometimes I knew the answer and I would ask questions. And there were times when I asked a question, when I had an answer, they had a better answer than I did. And I know a lot of leaders kind of get tripped up around this part because it's easier for me to just do it myself. I'm the smartest guy in the room. I'm just going to do it. And it takes time for me to do this with my people. But in the long run, they are more effective at getting their jobs done. And you're less involved and you can work on creating the future of the organization.
We have, in fact, talked through our allocated time. We've almost covered all the questions. Ted, is there anything that we haven't covered that you feel is important to include in today's conversation?
So there's a big conversation I hear around employee engagement is low. And we seem to have all these wonderful ideas on how to get people more engaged. And I would say I'm going to speak for the U.S., but you guys in Europe may be experiencing similarities. The source of non-engagement isn't always work. And I understand sometimes you have managers that are not really good. Corporations in the U.S. are losing $300 billion every year in workplace productivity. Do you all have any idea why we're losing that in the U.S.? It's one of those things you didn't know.
I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts on it, though. Because if I knew the answer, I'd be over there consulting.
Well, I don't have any thoughts on this. I'm going to give you facts. It's divorce. Divorce and bad relationships. When people are going through divorce, their workplace productivity drops by 50 to 75%. So there's your lack of engagement. We have a 53% divorce rate in the U.S. What does that have to do with corporate America? Well, you're already losing productivity, right? So what do you do with so many unproductive workers? You start laying them off, and you don't lay off the ones dealing with divorce. You lay off random people that put strain on, corporations. It perpetuates divorce. I say, now this is me thinking, that a lot of times conflict at work, conflict at home are things that people are not really good at. There was a survey a few years back, and they asked executives, if there was a skill that you were better at, what would it be? And the majority said conflict resolution. And I'm asserting that when you have these breakthrough initiatives and you ask people to accomplish things in a domain they didn't know, it's going to put them in conflict, and they're going to want to get away from that, right? So I'm an expert in this area. Let me continue working here. You want me over here. This doesn't make sense. I don't even understand the market, and blah, blah, blah. That person's in conflict with themselves for a number of reasons. So conflict resolution is so important that it would help people better navigate breakthrough initiatives, these really difficult, complex problems that give you access to new revenues, new markets. And also at home, when there's a misunderstanding, when both people are really skilled in managing conflict, they are better able to talk things through instead of thinking divorce is the solution. And so corporate America could, on its own, in a Six Sigma kind of way, push the divorce rate down towards zero by training people in the corporation to better navigate uncertainty and chaos, which breakthroughs are filled with chaos, disruption, uncertainty. When you're better able to navigate that at work and work through it and come out with these great new products and services, you take that capacity home, and you're going to be better at home, and you're going to stay married. And now you have less likelihood of being distracted by divorce, which makes you unproductive at work. So corporate America by itself could transform the culture of a nation if they were to take this on and train and develop their people to be more effective at navigating chaos. Because not only do you now have the CEO's breakthrough initiative, you have changes to the economy, you have pandemics, you have competitive changes, you have unforeseen, you have the black swans that occur, and your people become more nimble and able to navigate those unforeseen changes.
It's an excellent way for us to finish the conversation because it's going to give people a lot to think about. Ted, we thank you for your time today and for your sharing of expertise. And we will put the links to all of your details on the website so that people can be in touch with you directly. If we have questions that come through, we'll get in touch with you and get your thoughts on those and revisit a time where we can talk again.
Oh, thank you. It's been my pleasure. I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
That is the final part of our conversation with Ted Santos. We will have all of the details so that you can contact him directly if you would like more information. There are a number of videos that go over the topics that he has talked about with us as well that can be found on YouTube and most of the usual places. But for now, I'm Kim Bailey. He's Jamie Wadley. We've been talking with Ted Santos about breakthroughs and neuroplasticity, and this is Inside Exec.